Hey there, I'm estate planning attorney Paul Rabelais, and in this video, we're going to talk about the effect to you of a potential repeal of the step-up in basis rule. Okay, so we've got now a new administration, lots of tax proposals flying around out there. One of the tax proposals being mentioned it is the elimination of the step-up in basis. Our now President Biden proposed on the campaign trail to repeal the step-up in basis. So before I get into the pros and cons, the effect of the repeal of a step-up in basis, first let's talk about what the step-up in basis is. So the basics are the purchase price of an asset when one goes out and buys perhaps some land or a share of stock. The purchase price is referred to as the basis. Capital gains or capital losses refers to the difference between the basis and the value at the time of the sale. And it's not until that capital gain is realized at the time of sale that capital gains tax is due. So many people who own appreciated assets, they wind up passing them along to the heirs due to the current step-up in basis rules because that appreciation never goes taxed. Now's a real good time for an example. So let's say Dad bought a share of stock many years ago and he paid $10 for that share of stock. And now that share of stock has appreciated in value to $100. Bought it for $10 many years ago. Now it's worth $100. So if Dad, before he dies, sells that share of stock, he'll have to pay capital gains tax on the $90 of capital gain, the difference between the $10 that he bought it for and the sales price or the fair market value at the time it sold of $100. If he doesn't sell that share of stock and merely passes it along to one or more heirs, then that $90 of appreciation never goes taxed. When he dies, let's say he leaves that share of stock to his son, the son's new basis or stepped up basis is the value of that share on the date that Dad died. Bought it for $10, never sold it, died, it was worth $100 because of the step up in basis rule. Son's basis in that share of stock is now $100. And if months or years later, son decides to sell that share of stock, and let's say at the time he sells it, it's worth $120, well, he'll have $20 of capital gain, the difference between the value on the date of Dad's death and what he sells it for months or years later. So that step up in basis rule is really valuable, and older people in general who have assets with significant gain, they're discouraged from realizing their gains. In their mind, and it's brilliant thinking, they're thinking, I'm just going to hold on to these appreciated assets. I'm not going to sell them. I'm just going to, when I pass away, I'm going to leave them to my heirs, to the next generation. They will benefit from the step up in basis, and a whole lot of capital gains tax will be avoided. Probably a good time at this point to describe the carryover basis rules. Let's go back to our example. Dad bought a share of stock years ago for $10. It's now worth $100. He's still living. If he were to, before Dad dies, donate or give or transfer that share of stock to his son before Dad dies, then son doesn't benefit from the step up in basis. Son gets what's called a carryover basis. So when Dad donated during his lifetime that share of stock to his son, son gets the carryover basis, the same basis that Dad had. Son gets the $10 basis. So when son ultimately sells that share of stock, whenever he does, he'll pay capital gains tax on the difference between the $10 carryover basis and the value at the time it's sold. So be aware, there's a major distinction between the basis of appreciated assets that are inherited by someone versus appreciated assets that are given to someone by a donor who is alive at the time of the gift. Okay, so now let's talk about if they repeal the step up in basis rule, where under our new administration, our new Congress, they say, nope, the step up in basis is gone. And whenever an asset is sold, you have to go back to the value or amount that it was purchased, regardless of how long ago it was purchased, and regardless of who purchased it and whether those people are alive or dead. All right, so if the step up in basis rule is repealed, it's probably going to encourage more sales of appreciated assets, because those people who are sitting there holding appreciated assets, they really have no incentive to hold on to them and pass them along to eliminate the capital gains tax. So you'll probably see more appreciated assets being sold. You'll probably likely see a great deal more gifting of appreciated assets, particularly for people who want to avoid estate tax. Now, the ideal gift when one is gifting assets to get it out of their estate for estate tax purposes, the ideal gift is cash. Give away the cash, leave the appreciated assets in the estate, let those assets get a step up in basis at death, and that's kind of the best of all worlds. That scenario may get flipped to people who want to get assets out of their estate, giving away the appreciated assets so that tax can be deferred for many years and people can hold on to their cash. Those donors can hold on to their cash. All right, so now let's talk about some of the problems with the repeal of the step up in basis. One problem, record keeping. So if my dad was an investor and bought many different shares of stock in many different companies back in the 1950s, and if I were to inherit those and I were interested in selling some of those assets, how in the world am I going to figure out what those assets were acquired for, whether it was land or anything really, back in the 1950s? So right now, with our step up in basis rules, when someone inherits, it doesn't matter what the person who passed away, what they paid, or what the value of that asset was when it was acquired, because you just erase all of that gain and you just start with a brand new basis, the value on the date that the person died. So record keeping will be significantly more difficult if the step up in basis rule is eliminated. But the real kicker is if the step up in basis rule gets eliminated in conjunction with other new administration proposals of increasing the estate tax. Right now, when somebody dies, currently, if they have up to $11.7 million of fair market value of assets in their estate, there's not going to be any estate tax. There's only a 40% estate tax on the amount of one's estate that exceeds the $11.7 million threshold. But Biden's proposals are not only to eliminate the step up in basis, but also significantly increase the estate tax by significantly reducing the estate tax exclusion amount from 11.7 million to, let's say, 3 million, and a proposal out there to increase the estate tax rate from 40% to 50%. So it's that combination of increased estate tax and repeal of step up in basis that's going to really, whammy some families. Let me give an example. So let's say an individual dies and he has this mythical $1,000 of an asset that is subject to the estate tax because that person's estate is over the threshold. And that $1,000 asset, let's say it's virtually all capital gain. It was something, maybe a share of stock that they bought years ago for nothing or next to nothing. And now it's worth $1,000. So you've got a $1,000 asset that, and there's no step up in basis, and we've got a 50% estate tax on that. So you take that $1,000 asset, and the first thing you do is you calculate the estate tax. And so you're taking the $1,000 asset subject to a 50% estate tax. Okay, now we gotta pay $500 to the IRS 9 months after the person dies because they owned an asset that was worth $1,000 when they died. Now, in addition to that, you gotta sell the asset in order to create the cash to pay the IRS, because the IRS only takes cash. They take money, they don't take assets. So now you've got to sell that $1,000 asset, And let's say the capital gains tax is a mere 25%. So because you have to sell the asset and pay 25% capital gains tax, let's say on that $1,000 asset, there's $250 of capital gains tax. So now that person who died with a $1,000 asset is having to pay $750, or their estate is having to pay $750 to the IRS in cash because they owned an asset that was worth $1,000 when they died. So if they tried to leave that $1,000 asset to their 5 children equally, how much would each child get? You would think the man died, he had a $1,000 asset left to 5 children. If you do a little math, you figure, yeah, each child should get $200. That's pretty good. But no, under the repeal of the capital gains tax and the increase in the estate tax, that gentleman who left a $1,000 asset to 5 children, each child would get a mere $50 out of that $1,000 asset because $750 had to go to the government. Okay, so with that being said, what are the pros and cons of a repeal of the step-up in basis? I guess perhaps a pro is, and maybe it's not a pro, is our government will likely get more revenue because people will be encouraged to sell their appreciated asset and realize that capital gain. Personally, I think our country doesn't have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem, but that's another story. And then also another consequence of the repeal of step-up in basis is it's going to encourage the gifting of appreciated assets in order to defer tax, let people keep the cash in their estate, whereas now people who are gifting cash and keeping the appreciated assets in the estate. Some of the cons of the repeal of the capital gains tax, of the step-up in basis, is the record keeping is going to be a major challenge. And then also, as I mentioned, the repeal of the step-up in basis combined with an increase in the estate tax is going to cause many families to value what they own when they die and calculate roughly 75% of that value and have to write a check to the IRS for 75% of the value of assets that they own when they die. So hope you were able to follow along. I bet you were. If you've got any comments, and I have a feeling a lot of the comments are, it's going to be something like the darn government, they take everything, blah, blah, blah. And that's okay if that's how you feel. I want to know how you feel in the comments below because all that communication really helps. So if you feel like the repeal of the step-up in basis would be helpful, let me know why. If you feel like it'd be a disaster, let me know why, and we'll stimulate some conversation that way. All right, just make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't subscribed already. That way you won't miss anything. Punch the like button. That tells YouTube to show my videos to more people. We'll see you next time.